Okay, my name is Jens, and I'm currently working on Qt for this desktop. And before I start, I just want a little bit of context. How many of you guys have used Qt? Hands up. How many have never used Qt? Okay, so roughly half of you have, which means I'm going to try to present it as basic as possible, but it is really quite simple, so I think you'll get it once I start showing how this works. So I'm sure you're curious what Qt for the desktop really is. And before I start, this is the agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about that first. I'm going to say roughly how it works. I'm going to explain a little bit about the project status, which will be interesting. And we're going to make an application. That's my plan for today. So let's get started on the introduction. So what do you think, what are the desktop components? Well, the first thing you're kind of missing in Qt is native-looking components. I mean, scroll bars, buttons, these things. Somebody called them widgets, somebody called them controls. We actually call them components in Qt. It's a bit of a controversial name because I kind of like using controls. But at least this is how we refer to them on MeGo and Symbian at the moment, which also has similar components. But of course, you cannot use mobile components on the desktop because they act quite differently. For instance, scroll bars makes no sense on a mobile phone. So it's quite clear that we need to extend the API a bit to make it work for the desktop. So what are the other things that you're kind of missing in Qt? Can I get some suggestions? Have anyone here actually made a desktop application using Qt? Nobody. I guess that's why you're here. Well, I can actually show some of the things you're currently missing. Windows and dialogues, there is actually no way to create top-level windows within Qt. You have to use C++ for that. Menus and shortcuts, not supported in Qt. You can draw your own menus, but they don't actually hook into the system menus. Tooltips, something as simple as a tooltip, it's actually not supported. I mean, you can trivially make a tooltip yourself, but it won't actually show up on top of your existing windows. Scroll wheel support, it's implicitly supported in the flickable area, but you cannot control it yourself. Mouse cursors, item views, big hole. Lots of people use item views for many things, but there's no convenient way to do it in QML. It's very low level. Scroll bars, I mentioned it, it's surprisingly hard to implement a working scroll bar. So we need to have that much simpler available to the desktop. And last but not least, layouts. There is anchor layouts built into the Qt language, but as you will find when you're making desktop applications is that you kind of need more flexible layouts than that. So one of the last things that we have added to the desktop components has been sort of bridging the gap between the existing QWidget layouts and QML. And I'm going to show some of that today. So how does it work? Well, basically, it's totally new API. It's inspired by the MeGo and Symbian components from an API perspective, but it's quite clear that it has to be desktop-centric. For instance, a tab widget is not available on MeGo, so we need to create a tab widget here. A splitter is something you only use on the desktop. So there's lots of things we need to extend. So the idea that we had in the old widget world where there was one API to rule them all, it doesn't work when you have different targets like that. You have to have separate APIs. And also, it's still cross-platform on Linux, Mac, and Windows. So the existing desktop platforms that we support with widgets today, they should work just as well with the desktop components as they do with the old QWidget. So you're not losing anything here. So, and basically the way they're implemented is that they're still using QStyle. We have written lots of styles like Windows style, GTK style, and Mac style. And there's a lot of work put into those already. So actually, this whole thing started as me wanting to try out to see whether or not I could use the same styling mechanism in Qt. And it turned out to be quite simple. The logic, however, is entirely written in Qt. And the idea behind that is that I want you to be able to take these components, use them yourself, and rewrite them. They're basically BSD licensed, so you can take it into a commercial project, and you can add functionality that's currently missing. And I would actually like to have that approach as opposed to adding every single possible feature that everybody could potentially need, as I think we have done for some of our existing widgets. And in addition to having these native controls, I've tried to abstract certain reusable components that you might want to use in your own Qt code, but they're not necessarily native components, such as a mouse wheel area, a cursor area, a tooltip area, and a style item. I think these three are pretty self-explanatory. The cursor area is basically just you can assign an area on the screen that has a different mouse cursor. The tooltip area is one of those things where the mouse hovers over and it shows something. And the style item is basically the style bridge, which at the moment maps to Q style, but it might as well map to GTK style because it really is its own styling API. So that's basically how the items are built up. And it would actually be neat if I can show the internals of this to those that have actually seen this before. So we can, for instance, look at the button. So this is basically how a component is built up. It's pure Qt Quick code, what you see here. But it uses a tooltip area as a convenience class because the button has a tooltip. It assigns an implicit width so that a button knows how big it is, and you can actually ask a button what's your ideal size. This is needed for layouts and things like that. And it draws itself using a style item, which basically maps to the native look and feel of the operating system. So this digs down into C++ and hides all the nasty parts from you. And of course, this is the code you don't necessarily have to deal with because all you basically have to deal with is a button. I'm just showing how it looks like from the inside. So let's get going. And what's the current project status? Well, I have no evil master plan with this. I'm not trying to take over Q widgets. For Qt 5, we're still going to focus on providing Q widgets as they are in Qt 4, pretty much without any disruption to you guys. So for the most part, you just have to recompile and Q widgets will work. The thing is, I basically just want to prove that you can use Qt Quick efficiently on the desktop, and it's going to be much more awesome than what you're used to. So as I said, QWidget will coexist peacefully with this thing. And right now, the project for Qt 5 is a little bit on hold because we need to get the underlying infrastructure in place before we can really push this into Qt 5. There is no army of trolls currently working on this, and the army is actually standing right here. But there has been a significant amount of contributions, and I'm actually looking for more input from you guys. I mean, contribution basically means at the level, just write bug reports. I just need to know if something is broken or not. But as you will see later in the presentation, it's already quite usable. It's, as I said, unsupported research, but I designed everything so it works with Qt 4.7 and Qt 4.8 right now, and eventually I will put it on Qt 5. But right now we're just waiting for some refactoring underneath before that's feasible. And I definitely want some contribution. So any question about the current project status? I'm sure you're a little bit curious. Can you use this?
So are there any basically limitations with if you are planning to migrate from the Q widget mechanism like what we were traditionally using to Qt Quick?
If there are any known limitations, you mean? I mean, of course, the API is currently incomplete. As I said, it's being developed. It's not a huge project at the moment, but I can show you roughly how complete it is. But when it comes to things like item views, for instance, tree views, they're not currently supported because it's very hard to do tree models in the existing Qt Quick infrastructure. But these are things that will eventually come. Layouts we didn't have a couple of weeks ago. I merged in layouts, which was actually contributed by an external between when I was at DevDays in Munich and now. So there is a lot of things going on right now that bridges those gaps. So of course, it's not currently complete. But I can show you what you can already do with this in just a few minutes. So I can start by just showing what it looks like in person. I'm going to change to the desktop project. So if you just check out the desktop repository, I'll give you the link later, and run it, it looks like this. So it looks very familiar. If you ever used widgets on Mac, this is exactly what they look like. The difference is that these are actually written entirely in Qt Quick. So nothing terribly exciting here. I think you will recognize most of these things. Scroll bars work. You can set tab positions. You can remove the text frame. You can change tick marks on the slider. Well, actually, I haven't bound that up. There's some sort of item view support. And you can add some weird things like fading that you can't do with widgets, some scaling effects. And there's even a Qt dial. I wasn't sure if I wanted to port this, but it was just like 100 lines of Qt Quick code. So I mean, why not? Somebody might want it. And it looks quite shiny, I think. And you can do other cool things like this, which is just blending Qt Quick with these widgets. So adding animations is absolutely trivial. So as you can see, this works quite well right now. You can use this in an application, and it's entirely cross-platform on the desktop, just like QWidget is. And let's just see how we can code with this. So let's look at how we can make an application, because I think that's what people want to see. And before I start, I want to present the MeSpot. It's actually a Spotify client. How many people here does not know what Spotify is? So everybody knows what Spotify is. Great. It's a music application that basically you can subscribe to, and yeah, you have a fixed rate and you can play whatever you want. And I was looking for a good example, and it turns out that MeSpot, which there is another presentation, I think it's later today, maybe, written by Johan Lopez, a coworker of mine. Really great application on the N9, so for those of you that have one, can play with it later today. And the cool thing is this is just one of those examples where you can take an existing Qt Quick application and easily port it to the desktop without actually modifying the underlying code. All I have to touch here is QML, because QML has the entire interface. So basically, I asked Johan if I can borrow his backend and make a new UI on top of that. And he said that was OK. So hopefully, I can share that code with you as well later. But for the purpose of this presentation, all you have to know is that I'm using the exact same backend for this application. So it's a very close to real-world scenario where you just want to port things. So this is, of course, not a desktop application. As you can see, it's very mobile-centric. So what does Spotify look like on the desktop? Most of you have probably seen it, but it looks like this. So you have this huge playlist view, and you have playlists here, you have the data here, and you have the album art down here, and you have a toolbar, and you have some play and pause buttons. So we're going to make something like that, but of course not exactly the same. And a rough sketch of the application can look like this. And I'm going to do basically the same layout. Let's make a playlist view here. Let's make the data here, the gallery there, and we're going to make a toolbar. It's a quite simple sketch, and I kind of like my own artwork there. So let's start by this part. How can I do this with desktop components? And this is when you're going to see lots of code. So before we start, I want to know if you can read this, because I probably need to increase the font size quite a bit. So let me just increase it a few steps here. Can you read this in the back row? Looks like you're all nodding. That's great. So this is just my application skeleton, and I copied some helper properties, so I don't have to memorize this API, because this is just using the Spotify API, which has nothing to do with my presentation. But as you can see, there is absolutely no magic in here. It's just a few helper variables that I'll bind my program to. I'm going to hold my current playlist here. This is a string property containing the current track name. So if it's asked Spotify to format the current track name for me, we have current track duration. So if there is a current track set, then show the current track duration. Otherwise, show 00 as a string. We have, yeah. I think you get the idea. The current track is bound to the Spotify's current playing track. Current track name is just the current track name, otherwise an empty string. And the current album source is just a URL that we can look up the image for. So this is just the glue we need. And I copied this directly from the mobile client. So there is no magic here whatsoever. So let's look at how this part works. The first thing here is import Qt Quick 1.1. In Qt 5, that will be Qt Quick 2.0, but that's the only difference. So Qt Quick 1.1 is basically what we ship with Qt 4.7.4 and Qt 4.8. So that's what you already have out there in the wild. So you can really go home and play with this today. Second thing is I import the Qt desktop components, which I have compiled and done a make install, and they're actually now residing inside my Qt library as an extension. And as you can see, the version number here does not reflect my current level of confidence in the API. But it does point out the fact that the API is currently not stable. I want feedback before I stabilize it, and I'm not sure if it's going to be stable before Qt 5, but that's open for discussion. I don't know yet. And the last thing is the Qt Spotify library, which is basically this mobile library that MeSpot uses. So let's just start by designing our application. As you can see, the root item is an application window. It's the same thing it's called on MeGo. It has a width and a height, and you can do things like putting in a toolbar. So actually, I can just show it without a toolbar, and it pops up. Oh, I need to change my project. Let's go in here, change to Quick Spot, run this, and there you go. It's an empty window. I want a toolbar. I simply create a toolbar. Run that, and you have a toolbar. So the first thing I wanted to present was how we can actually make this list view. And in Qt Quick, there is a list There is some sort of list, but it doesn't support columns. So I had to extend this to show some sort of table, and the name I gave it is table view. But for those of you that come from the widget side, the table view is actually a little bit closer to the tree view you have in widgets. So basically, I don't support tree, so I couldn't call it tree view, obviously, and I decided to call it table view. But these APIs are open for discussion, so if you have wild, crazy questions, yeah, there you go.
So toolbar and table view are imported from Qt Desktop?
Yes. These are extensions. He was asking if these are imported from Qt Quick Desktop. Yes. If I remove this desktop import, you will lose both toolbar and table view. So they're all in the desktop namespace. So at the moment, I'm going to just anchors.center in parent on this one. I can show that, and you can see there it is. It's just this nice little square. I'm going to throw in a table column, which is basically the header that will contain each row of information. So I think it's called title. I'm going to say playlists and write that correctly. And it looks like that. So quite familiar. And the data you put in here is the same as for list view in Qt Quick. So you can create any type of Qt Quick model you can hook into this. And I can, for instance, create my own list model and just set list element. And in the playlist, I will put name, yeah, some sort of tests. Yeah, doesn't really matter. I'm just going to throw a few items in there and show that. And you can see I have 3 items in my model. And this can, of course, be a C++ model as well, which I'll use in a second. So, and the other thing is, like, if there are more properties, one for each column, the way I assign them is to do artist 1. And then you have to create suddenly 2 columns. And you have to say which property is bound to each column. So I just say role on the first one is name, and role on the second one is artist. And there you can see it actually shows up like that. So let me extend this a bit further. I only want playlists in the left view, and I want to use a C++ model here. So the C++ model is going to be bound if Spotify dot, I think it's user. If we are logged into Spotify, there will be a user. We're going to go for Spotify.user.playlists. And otherwise, just use the empty model. I think that's correct. So there you go. Now I hooked it up to my C++ backend. So this is very easy because I already designed, or Yuan actually designed the API to work nicely with Qt Quick. So these are actually Q objects, everything you see in there, and they actually have functions, which I'll show you in a second. So that's how I create the playlist view. Oops, where did my code go? Any questions so far? No. OK. And now I'm going to throw in a second table. So how do we put these tables next to each other? Because if I put them now right in like this, they will both be centered on top of each other. So I'm going to remove the center on top, the centering part. I'm going to place them in a row. And that's how you position items next to each other. So now I just have 2 identical copies of the playlists. And actually, I'll change this one and just leave it empty for now. Yeah, it's opening behind my application there. There you go. That's what it looks like now. Of course, we want to have this resizable. So here's one other component you get from desktop. You get a splitter row. And we can do anchors.fill parent, and I'm going to do anchors.margins and say 8 and see how that works. So now you have a splitter. Again, this is a bit difficult to do with pure Qt Quick, but it's extended to support these use cases. So the splitter row, you can put whatever you put inside the splitter row will automatically have its own splitter handle next to it. And you can do things like setting the default width, the default height, the minimum width, and the minimum height of the splitter row. So, but we can do the details later. So now I just want to hook up my playlists. So let's create some more table columns. I'm going to create 3 table columns for the other view. And it's going to be track on the first one. And let's use the role should be name. And the second one, we're going to throw in artist. It's a bit inconsistent. I know the S looks odd there. It shouldn't be there, but that's a bug in the backend. And I throw in album here. Of course, if I run this, I haven't actually hooked it up to any data, so you will just see that it has these 3 columns. So the way I want to hook this up to the data is I want to double-click on the first one, shall actually fill the data of the second one. So what we can do here, we can say that on activated, which basically means double-click, but it could be platform independent. So whether or not how you activate an item on your platform will trigger this, just like in QWidgets. Just 1 second. So when I activate, I want the current playlist to be similar to the model at position current index. So I'm basically just taking one model, and basically this first view contains playlists, but each playlist is an object by itself, which I can attach. I can just set to the current playlist, which is just a variant here, meaning it can contain any object. And of course, that becomes the model of the second one. So the model here is current. If there is a current playlist, you take current playlist dot tracks. Otherwise, use the empty model as before. So when I go in here, I double click here. See, you have data. It's quite simple. And I can hop in here, and I can just change the playlist. And as you can see here, I mean, everything, the scrolling behavior and all this stuff just magically works. So how do I play a track? Well, again, I'm going to do on activated. We're going to say model at current index dot play. Because these are Q objects, so you can give them any function. So this is just one way you can design your backend to be very Qt quick friendly. I kind of like this pattern. It's basically, the C++ model is just returning Q lists with Q objects in them. So I go in here, I play, and it should actually start playing. But right now, I have a bit of a problem with the network connection. Hopefully that will come up. I don't actually need network here because it has offline support, so it caches these items between sessions. But I'll see if I can make this work a bit later. So OK, so that's how you do the just hook up the models. How do I create a toolbar? Well, I already created a toolbar, so I'm just going to populate this. So I'm now going to show how you can use layouts, because traditionally in Qt Quick, you have to use anchors for everything. You have to create the button, you have to anchor the second button to the first one, or you can create rows. But rows don't have much logic inside them. You can't add stretch properties, stretch factors, these things. So we need to extend that a little bit. And actually, for desktop, I created something called a row layout. Or actually, somebody else did this. Adriana Rosenda, an external, contributed this, and I just merged it into the desktop branch. And that's actually how I would like you guys to contribute as well. It's really good stuff. So I'm going to take this row layout. I'm going to put some buttons in it. The first is going to be the back button. The second is going to be the pause button. And the third is going to be the play button. And see what that looks like. Well, actually, I need to put some icons on here. And putting icons on buttons can be either assigned by pixmaps, but one thing I find convenient is to use these, the desktop standard naming convention for this. Because Qt, you can actually install an icon theme in your application and use logical name for icons, and you will get the native icons on whatever platform, especially on Linux, on GNOME and on KDE, you will get the native icons here. But on Mac, I actually have to ship a set of icons with my application. So if anyone is curious about how doing that, just ask me, because I haven't actually seen anybody but me do this. But this is not Qt Quick related. This is just regular QWidget stuff. I'm going to use icon name here. So I'm throwing media, skip, backward. And I want a similar one forward here. See what that looks like? Well, now it's top left corner. This is because I didn't actually fill the toolbar. Anchors.fill parent. So now the layout stretches across the whole toolbar. And now you can see 2 icons in here. So, and the second button here is going to be icon name, media, playback, start, or pause. So we can hook this up to logic right away, because we can just say on clicked, Spotify.play previous. And similar for this one, play next. And we do an on-click Spotify.pause. But the second one you actually want to change. When the Spotify is playing, you want to do one thing. When Spotify has paused, you want to do something else. So here we need to just add a bit more logic. Spotify is playing. And otherwise, we do a media playback. I think it's start. Just going to look up that, yes. And similar for the icon, similar for the actual command down here. If Spotify is playing, you do Spotify.pause, otherwise Spotify.play. So,
T at the end of start.
Oh, thank you. Let's see how that looks like. So there you go. And now you can see it actually changes when I start a track. So, and you should be able to skip as well. But for some reason, the audio is not playing. OK, but at least it's working. So those are the tool buttons. I need 2 labels. Again, label is the same thing as a text. The only difference between label and the text primitive in Qt Quick is that it has a system default font and color. So if you consistently use these items, you will get a native look and feel on all platforms. I want a label, I want a slider, and I want another label. This is for track duration and track time. And I actually have the content for these guys already. So I can just say text is current track time. And the other one is current track duration. And for the slider, let's see what that looks like. There you go. You have the data up here. And one more thing I'm missing is that I actually want the slider to be stretchable. And this you could achieve with a regular row, except for that I default center my controls, because that's usually what I want for convenience. So if I want this, the slider is in a row layout. So I just say layout dot size horizontal size policy is layout dot expanding, just like you would in regular Q widgets. And now you can see that the thing expands to fill the entire view. And of course, all the other controls are squashed together now. I kind of want to have a little bit of space around this. I'm going to say anchors.margins should be 8. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And one more thing I think we're missing. I think we're missing a text field. And it's not called, actually, I even forget what things are called in regular widget world because I've been using this thing for so long. But as you can see, the text field is a line edit. And we're using this name, first of all, because Migo and Symbian has these naming conventions already. So whenever there is an existing name, we try to use the same on all platforms. Of course, other things that don't make sense, like a tool button, don't make sense on all platforms. We have to invent names for on the desktop. So I'm just going to give this a name, and let me call it, for instance, a search edit. So there you go. That's my layout. Any questions so far? No. And so we have done this part. I didn't show that, but we have also done this part. And yeah, let's just, actually, I want to see if we can make this playback now, because I managed to get it up and running before we started. So hopefully it's just buffering a little bit. Skip next. It's just the network connection is terribly slow, as you all probably noticed. Buffering. So already you have almost a fully functional Spotify application. And I'm not sure how many minutes we spent on doing this, but it was pretty fast. So let's just add some more features. I think I want to have a status bar. So as you might guess, the way you create a toolbar is quite similar to how you create a status bar. I assign a status bar to a status bar. And inside my status bar, I want a label. And the label should be bound to current track name. And we can do an anchors center in parent. So we try that again. You can see we now have a status bar, and it shows the current name down there. It's extremely simple. And I mean, you can't iterate this fast with QWidgets, can you? You can get almost there by using the designer, but it's just not as flexible. The thing is, if I go in now, I want to prove the fact that we're actually cross-platform. I can go into Linux, and this is actually it's a live shared folder to the exact same QML file. So I can just run this in Linux, and you get the exact same code. So this is the exact same code running on Linux. No compile required because it's all in QML, right? So I can go into Linux, and I have a cross-platform Spotify application already. You can hear the music vaguely here. So as cross-platform as with QWidgets. But right now, I think the look and feel here, this looks native. This looks like a native Linux application. But I want to make it look a little bit more polished. And some things you can do here that you actually can't do with regular QWidgets. One thing that I've been missing on QWidgets is a way to do this. On Mac, you have this rounded line edits. Like when you do searches, they have this convenience, this convention that line edit should be rounded. So you can give a style hint and say, I want the rounded appearance. And then it's up to the style to implement it. So here you can see you have a rounded search line edit, which is pretty cool. You can't do that with QWidgets. Another thing I can do, I can create a button group here for my tool buttons. And we can say that the, sorry, it's a button row. And we wrap our tool buttons inside it. And we give the button row a style hint. Should be the Mac segmented. And you get these segmented buttons on Mac. So I've added some nice little things that makes it much easier to polish your application than it is with QWidget. And as you see, you can rapidly iterate through this. I actually prefer the other appearance, though, so I'm just going to remove the button row for now. It just shows the kind of possibilities that you already have that you don't have in QWidgets without doing it yourself. I kind of like having a single line splitter. So how do I do that? I go into the splitter. I say that the handle width should be 1 pixel. And if I do that, you're going to see that there's some ugliness here because the frames are taking up too much space here. And I can just remove the frames. So if I kill the margins, and I go into my table view here, and I say frame should be false, it should take away the frame around both of them. And it looks much cleaner and more Mac-like, in my opinion. You can do some other things. Maybe you don't want the alternate row appearance. So you can just set an alternate row color. Or you can say that I think, you should not have alternate row color. So now we get one color here. And you can set that you can assign basically, no, actually, that's not a color property. But you get the idea. I don't want alternate color here. So one last thing I think we can add to our application is the search feature. Actually, we didn't complete the slider. I was a bit enthusiastic here. Let's see how we can hook up the slider. And the API of the slider is exactly the way it is on Symbian Amigo for those that have used the existing APIs. But again, it has a few things that is desktop specific, like tick marks. You don't want tick marks on the cell phone, but you actually want it here. So I can add tick marks, but I don't like tick marks, so I'm going to leave them disabled for now. And you can see how autocomplete makes it very easy for me to just remind myself about the API. So the SDK is very good at just picking up even stuff in code I write myself on the C++ side. It parses, and it gives me these extensions automatically, like layout expanding is sort of an attached property on the layout. So the slider, I'm going to say maximum value should be if the current track exists, current track dot duration in milliseconds, and otherwise we're going to put it at 0. And the minimum value is implicitly at 0. You can make it explicit as well. And we're going to say on current track position changed. Oh, actually, that's wrong. I think we want to do a onPressed change here. If the slider is not pressed, then we do a Spotify.seek to the current value of the slider, because the value is now in the range, of the seekable range, between minimum value and maximum value. So that makes it possible for me to skip in the song. I can hear some weird sounds going on here, so it seems like, yeah. Anyway, but that only takes half the connection. So you can also do an onCurrent track position changed. And current track position is a signal that comes from the engine, the Spotify engine. So I need to hook it up externally. And of course, you don't have an onCurrent track position change here. You need to create a connections element. So the connections element is going to target the Spotify thing. This is a context object that I set into my root item on the C++ side. And Spotify is available everywhere. So the target should be Spotify, and Spotify object, which is the global object in this application, will emit these signals. So I can just set on current track position changed. I want my slider.value to equal Spotify.current track position. So now the tracks, again, if the network connection was not so broken. Yeah, well, we can blame that on the Wi-Fi. And then I think the last thing we can throw in here. Do we have time? I mean, I'm going to leak a little bit into the. There is no session afterwards, but I guess you guys want to. Do you want to see me complete this, or do you want to skip to the end? Okay, I think most people seem to be nodding silently there. So the last thing I want to do is I want to add some album art. And we can just see how easy it is to do that. I'm going to create, because I'm going to split this left-hand side here, because you have the, let me run the application. I want to have the album art down here. So I'm going to put something in here that replaces the playlist. So I'm going to wrap this into a layout item, like that. And I will say that the width here is equal to parent.width. And let's see what that looks like. I'm going to say the width of this item is 200. That's what this looks like. And I'm going to throw in, and this can be, and I'm going to throw in an image here. And the source of that image, we can bind to current album source, which is this property up here. And we can say anchors.top should be attached to this view's bottom. So we can say this is attached to view.bottom. And anchors.bottom is parent.bottom. And width is parent.width. Let's see what that looks like. Still, this is so much more impressive when you have a proper network connection. Which we don't. So let me just continue. And the height is the same as width, so it's just a proportional square. And we can say that oh yeah, I'm just completing here. I want asynchronous loading, which is something I think we introduced in Qt Quick 1.1, which means it's not blocking, waiting for the image to load. Actually, I think that could be the reason why the network connection actually prevents the application from launching now, because it's synchronous. So we try this. I play this. Yeah, there you go. So I have album art. And the height can actually be... Does anyone know how you set the aspect ratio? Because I don't remember. There is a property on image for aspect on fill mode. What's it called? Preserve aspect crop. I think that's what I want. So there you go. It's a fully working Spotify app, written in like 20 minutes on stage. I think it's quite impressive. Yeah. So, of course, it's a bit embarrassing that I never actually got to fill out that search thing, but I'll share the code later. It's just a few lines of code. So basically what I could do is just show the old example here. Okay, I have to wait for a proper network connection anyway. But that's cool. So let me go back to my presentation again. So now we have finished the application. So the thing about this is, as I showed you, this is a fully working set of components. All I'm lacking here is a bit of feedback on the API, because as you can see, it's already fairly complete. In fact, apart from the tree view support, I don't have any really big gaps in it. One thing I can show you, because this was suggested on the mailing list only last week, and we pushed an experimental feature, is to have a settings object. This is something we don't have in Qt Quick. I think it belongs in Qt Quick. So we need to import settings 1.0, or I think it's 0.1. And you can just do an, do I even need that? And you can basically have persistent settings here. So I can set things like minimum width on my application. I think I can continue forever with this API discussion. So unless you have specific questions, I think we're going to set up some time for that. Let's go with questions.
Appropriate place to go to get both the components and to provide feedback?
Excellent question. So here's where the components are right now. It's a public Itorius repo. And obviously, I have to move this to Qt project. The only reason I haven't done so is I wanted to wait until after DevDays. But as soon as I have time, I will move this to qtproject.org, which is where Qt is currently placed. So if you just, all you have to do is do a git clone on this. And I can open the web page if we have a working network connection. We don't. It won't even open my browser for. I mean, just Google for Qt. OK, they're opened. So this is where it currently is. And you can see I even have a merge request that I haven't looked at. Cool. Somebody has a patch for my settings object. So just go in here, fetch this, and you have all the stuff you need. And there's a README file inside it. But really, all you have to do is to do a qmake, make, and make install. And then you can import Qt Desktop 0.1 and just do anything I just did in your own application. So more questions?
Hi. So I agree that with these Qt Quick components, you were able to come up with this a little bit quicker than had you just done this with widgets.
Yes.
But that was, I think if you used widgets, you would also be able to do this pretty quickly using sort of the native look. And with our applications, a lot of, we can come up with a basic layout and use the native look pretty quickly, and that 80% of the work comes in stylizing that or coming up with custom widgets. And it seems like here, when you're in that situation, it ends up being more work because you have to sort of enumerate all the possibilities that Qt Quick might define. Do you kind of understand what I'm saying?
That you have to enumerate all the possibilities.
When you're actually rendering this on the back end or styling it or painting it, I don't know, I guess this is still 4.8.
This is currently running on 4.8, yes. I have it on 5 as well. Yeah.
So then you're basically painting QGraphics widgets on the back end, and you're using these properties Is that right? So it seems like it would be more, is it in fact more work when you're using, when you're trying to set this up to use with Qt Quick? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I don't know why you say it's more work. I mean, as
Do
I
you feel
showed,
like it's the same amount of work to paint a custom widget with Qt Quick?
well,
as
in
it is with-
Qt5 there will be a canvas. So if you want to do custom stuff like doing bar charts and these things, you can use a canvas. Or you can use raw OpenGL, which is what I've used for some components. So, I mean, if you're used to QPainter, there is a QPainted item. You can do anything in QPainter right now. In fact, I am using QPainted item when I port this to Qt5. And QPainted item basically means you just get the paint event, and you can do exactly what you do in the existing widgets. In fact, it's very easy to port. I can show what it looks like. Style item. I mean, basically, this is my, quite a lot of code in here. So basically, you just create a Q style item here, which is a Q declarative item, which will be a Q quick item in Qt5. And it's just like a Q widget. You have the same events. I mean, have you used Graphics View?
Yeah, actually we use Graphics View pretty much exclusively.
Yeah.
But, you know, with Qt Quick, you have all those properties, and it seems like you would have to take into account all of those properties as opposed to just what you need to accomplish whatever look you're going for.
I don't see why you have to take everything into account. I mean, I think it's more a matter of you need to actually sit down and I can explain a bit closer, but I think the question is a little bit too vague for me to address. Yeah, I would like to discuss it afterwards though, because yeah, I'm sure there's other questions we can take first. Take this one.
One of the things you mentioned that's still missing is multiple windows. Will there be a solution for that?
Yes. I can show it right now, actually. If I didn't break my application when I did that copy. I can create, and I have to say, the windowing API is still under discussion for Qt5, because truly this should be, it's a bit hackish right now in the 4.8 branch, obviously, because I'm trying to make it extended in ways that it's not really designed to do. But you can do things like this. I can create a window. I can give it a size. And anchors, yeah, well, actually, and I can set visible true. And that should. And I put something in there. Actually, that doesn't work. Interesting. Oh, wait. So this is a bit experimental. So we only have a bit rough prototypes of this working. But the idea, OK, I'm not sure if this branch has it running. But the idea is that you have this thing here. And it has a modal property. There is even a dialog in here. Let me just run the other example, which I know works. We go back to desktop here. And I run this example. And here you can click this button, which opens a window from within Qt Quick. And you can maximize, you can normalize, and you can minimize. So it's already supported. And in Qt5, it will be natively supported. And we're still, I'm considering going to Brisbane to have a bigger discussion with Brisbane about this, because we need to align a bit more. We would like to have window as a base property in Qt Quick itself, but at the same time not part of the Qt Quick import, because you don't want to let everybody create windows. Sometimes you want to have sort of more, I guess, web browser-like environments where Windows should not be supported. So we just need to see how to support it. But yes, Windows are already working, but it's just, as I said, it's a bit experimental. I have a dialog API as well. But yeah, more questions? And as I briefly mentioned, I mean, this application window also have minimum width and minimum height. The layouts have minimum width, minimum height properties that you can set on them. So these things are also working. More questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first question is just kind of logistics. Was this session recorded in Munich and on as a video or something online?
It was, but only I think it's missing like 10 minutes. I'm not sure how to bridge that gap, but somebody said that there was some screw up on the recording. But yes, it will be put online in some shape or form. I was actually hoping we could re-record it here, but it seems it didn't happen.
Okay. In the second, you know, I saw kind of the blending in the animation from the one demo you had at the beginning, but what do you think the main benefits over Qt Quick versus just using the Q widgets is?
Well, I mean, of course, it depends on your point of view. I am much more efficient. Once you get used to this, I am much more efficient working on this. So by itself, I just find this a pleasure to work with. So I have a hard time going back to Q widgets and actually going to C++ for doing small graphics details, because I like the way you can just rapidly and make things look polished here. So that by itself, I think, is a strong argument. The other argument is that we are going to put much more effort into the Qt Quick tools in the future. So having a tool chain that's shared between the mobile platform and desktop platform will have synergy effects for both. Because I don't think we will have the time and resources to continue to push the Qt designer as much in the future as we did in the past. So as you say, at some point, I think these things will just follow naturally. But of course, as I said, if you like Q widgets, that is going to be a first-class citizen in Qt 5. We're not taking away Q widgets. That's very important to stress. So right now, this complements it. And I would just urge you to try it out and play with it and just see how much more fun it is to work with. But of course, right now, this is going to be a little bit incomplete compared to Q widgets. But I truly think this shows the future when it comes to development. Also, the fact that I had a mobile app designed for this, and I was able to port it on stage to a desktop app. Try doing that with widgets. It's not that simple. So I think this fits into the Qt everywhere.
Will it be possible to mix Windows implemented with widgets or with QML in one application?
To mix them?
Yes.
Well, that's a bit of a complicated question. At the moment, it's already possible in Qt 4.8. Because you can just create a Qt declarative item and use that as a widget. So if you take my button, put it inside the Qt declarative item, and then you already have a widget. But in Qt 5, I'm not exactly sure what the current plans are. So I think that will be supported. But I can't guarantee it right now, because I don't know. Maybe B can say something? OK. Sorry, I didn't want to wake you up. No, the question was basically whether or not we are going to support blending Qt Quick stuff inside Q widgets and the other way around. I am almost certain that we are going to support that. Yeah. Because yeah. Just as an example, in Qt Creator, the welcome screen, that's QML. So as I said, we're already using this. And it's very easy. It's just in Qt 5 right now, we are rewriting everything, so nothing kind of works at the moment, but it will soon. Yeah. More questions?
Do the desktop components currently play well in the design mode?
Do desktop components currently play well with the design mode in Creator? The unfortunate answer to that question is no. At the moment, they don't. I could try to show you. I mean, you can do layouts, basic layouts. Like you can create a dialog with it and put buttons and line edits and actually, it's kind of neat because you have this nice little click into place anchoring that we don't currently have in Designer. The problem is things like menus and lists. They actually require somebody to write code to support that. And of course, this is a moving target, so that will be second priority for now. But I wouldn't recommend it at the moment. But it has to be at some point. Yes. Other questions?
So your second or third slide had a list of limitations.
Yeah.
Are there any of those that just can't be done that we would expect never to be available?
Well, I listed them because I already implemented all of them. Is this the one you're talking about?
Oh, I guess I misunderstood.
I mean, it's basically, this is the functionality that's currently missing in Qt Quick, which I'm bridging with the desktop components. Okay. But I think many of these actually belong in Qt Quick proper. Some of these will propagate up, for instance, cursors and these things. So at the moment, I'm using the desktop stuff a little bit as a playing ground for new technologies that we might want to move in. I also think the layouts are up for discussion. I'd like to discuss that with like the Qt Quick team here to see if we can do that. Because The row layout and the row has a lot of things in common, and there's no reason you can't actually put the functionality directly into row, because I think it makes sense. But that's still up for discussion. Some people would like anchor layouts to be the only layouting mechanism in Qt Quick proper, and I see valid reasons for doing that as well. So, but as you can see, it's very easy to extend Qt Quick. I mean, there was nothing I couldn't achieve by just writing a bit of C++ in the back. But that doesn't mean I would like other people to have to write C++ to do the same thing. So let's just put them all into this repository, and then we have a tool set that bridges it. More questions? Yeah, him first, and then you.
How far the integration with native look and feel goes? For example, on Windows, you have, in a normal Windows 7, for example, you have a rollover effects on native buttons and stuff like that. Is that built in as well?
Yes, it is. As you can see, I have animations going on here.
So is that the native animation, or you're actually
This is the same animation QStyle uses. So anything we do in QStyle, I already do here. But I will be honest and say I had to hack a little bit to support this. So in Qt 5, I'm hoping we can do some changes to QStyle so we have a much cleaner and no dependencies on QWidget. Because in order to make this work with the existing Qt styles, and I'm not sure if that's a goal by itself, because right now you can actually use all your existing Qt styles with this, because it just goes through the same thing. But that does mean it has to create some fake widgets in the background. That obviously has to go in Qt 5, and it's scheduled. But yes, all the animations on Vista is working already. Actually, I just don't think I have it. I don't have a Vista thing installed here at the moment, but I can, yeah. But as you can say, there is no difference between the animations we have here and the other things we have on Vista. So there you go. More questions? Oh, this guy.
Is it possible to write your own custom widgets which you want to design?
Your own custom widgets? Yes. As I said, I mean, there's nothing magical about the widget that I just showed you. When I showed you the button, that is all the code required for a button. If I show you the widget, the code I have for the table view, this is roughly 400 lines in here. Or actually, it's 600 lines. That's all the code in the table view. And this code will be, as far as I know, it will be BSD licensed. You can take it, and you can modify it to your heart's content. So I think it's much more accessible than your typical C++ widget with lots of private implementation. I would actually encourage you to just take this and extend it as is. So the button itself, yes, you can write it, because as I said, the tooltip area, I'm trying to factor out reusable sub-elements like tooltip and the style item so that you can do it yourself. Like the style item, you can say you can write a custom slider in there, and it will give you a native-looking slider, and you just use that as a building block instead of an image. Of course, you can replace this entire thing with an image if you have a custom look and feel you want to replicate. There's a lot of things I could say about styling, but we can have that in a smaller discussion if you're interested. Yeah?
Is the base set up for this application a Q declarative view? You set the QML and you do show, or is it just a QML file and you have a viewer running the QML?
I forgot to show you that. I'm going to show it. I have the main file of QuickSpot right here. This is the entire C++ code. And as you asked, the reason I do this, one thing you could do, there is no reason I couldn't have Qt Spotify as a library and just leave it at that. But I'm doing two things here. I'm setting the Spotify root context object, which is the one I was referring to in my application. And that's basically it. I set my main QML file. And as I mentioned, I set an icon so that I can get these desktop icons on Mac and Windows, because Mac and Windows doesn't actually have a desktop theme. So you have to ship it with the application. But this is just regular QWidget code. I mean, everything in here is just QWidget code. So yeah. Any more questions? There's another one from here. Oh, that's fine. That's great.
I'm new to Qt, so I have
Yeah.
So is there a sample app that's available for download that uses?
At the moment, I mean, I don't have too much time. I'm not actually working full time on this project. I'm a little bit involved in other Nokia things at the moment. So I haven't gotten time to write many examples. I think this is the biggest example I have, and I have the gallery that you see. One thing I would like somebody to just contribute a bunch of examples, and I'll eventually do it myself. So just look at the examples folder.
Is it on the USB stick or?
I would just go to that, search for Qt Components desktop. You will find that Gitorious link, and I will just check it out from there. You will have to install Git, though. You can probably download it as a zip file if that's not something you want to do. As I said, just do expect some rough edges, obviously. It's not done as such, but it's quite complete. Yeah? Anything else? There's another one? Wow.
Put the slide with the URLs on there?
Yes, that's a great idea. And before I do that, they told me to show this slide. We would really like some feedback. So if you like this presentation, or if you didn't like it, please let us know, because we didn't get much feedback in Munich. So I'm going to keep this slide up so you can write it down. But I generally just go to Google and search for Qt Quick Desktop, and it will show up as the top search result. I also have, I'm using the standard Qt bug report forum. You just have to make sure that you label, I'm going to say that you label your bugs. I think it's in the README file, but label your bugs as a Qt component bug and not as a Qt bug itself. And preferably with the desktop subcomponent set. So I think that's it. Unless there's a last question? No? Great. Thanks.